point out that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I wonder how gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 576th edition of Energy Week with George Harvey and the amazing Tom Fennell, who is sadly not here again. He had indicated that he wanted to be here, but we weren't able to get him on the phone. So we are recording this on the 6th of June. The articles that we're covering start on the 30th of May and go up to the 5th of June. And these come from my blog, geoharvey.com. You can also go down scroll down to a couple of links that you can, one of them takes you to a website that Tom and I have used to build the program, and the other one gives you the ability to download a text file with pictures that you can use. You can use either of those to get direct links to the articles that I'm talking about, but you can go to geoharvey.com and click on the calendar. As I said, we're going to start on the 30th of May. And by clicking on the calendar to the right date, you'll get usually 15 articles that you can look through to get the right one. So we're starting with an article from The Guardian, and that article, well, let me get the picture up. This article is from The Guardian, as I said, and the title is Increasing Use of Renewable Energy in the United States Yields Billions of Dollars of Benefits. By increasing its use of renewable energy, the United States has not only reduced the planet warming emissions, but it also improved its air quality, yielding hundreds of billions of dollars of benefits, a report published in the journal Cell Reports Sustainability has found. Now, I want to tell you, I want to tell you that just in Vermont, the cost of air pollution in Vermont, and Vermont is not known for its horrible air pollution, but it has some, costs the average Vermont family, costs the average Vermonter something like $480, $500 each year in medical expenses that we don't normally see because they're covered by the state or they're covered by insurance or they're covered by something. And this is just part of the cost of air pollution and the problems with climate change. Air pollution causes problems with buildings, it causes problems with agriculture. It's a serious problem. So with that, I will go on. We have an article here from ABC News. The picture for this is the picture from this is a picture of Fort McMurray, and it's a picture of evacuation of Fort McMurray. And you know, this looks scary because the evacuation is going right past the fire. But the picture is from 2016, and I know that this picture is one that we have seen on this show before. Fort McMurray, let me just read the title. Wildfire near Canada's oil sands hub under control, Alberta officials say. A wildfire that forced thousands of residents from their homes in Western Canada's oil sands hub at Fort McMurray earlier this month is now under control, Alberta officials said. In 2016, wildfires forced a mass evacuation of the city, the whole city, and burned down more than 2,000 homes. Obviously, this is a big deal, and the people in Fort McMurray are doubtless very happy that they don't have to deal with the problem that they had 8 years ago. But this kind of problem is developing because of wildfires, which are worse than they had been in the past because of drought, high winds, other things associated with climate change. And I'm not kidding. The scientists feel that they know that this is happening, not that it's a guess or something like that. And I can explain part of that, but I'm not going to do it right now. The thing is, this particular kind of problem that they have at Fort McMurray is, to some degree, a result of the products that Fort McMurray supplies. So this is coming home fast to that particular city. Our next item comes from PV Magazine International. And we have a picture of land in New South Wales. And that's what parts of New South Wales is probably, it's very big compared to Texas. The title of this particular article is Australian Developer Plans 2 gigawatt 2 gigawatt renewables project. The Australian developer Squadron Energy filed documents with New South Wales Planning Authority for its proposed Cooraki Energy Park. The project is to have 1 gigawatt of PV capacity, 1 gigawatt of wind capacity, and a battery system capable of 1 gigawatt and up to 12 hours of storage. So that's 12 gigawatt hours of storage. This is a big project, obviously. The land that we were just looking at is not that is the land that this project is going to be sited on, or at least part of the project is going to be sited on. I want to point out that this is something that is happening more and more frequently. We have projects that we would call gigantic. A gigawatt project, a gigawatt of solar or wind or a gigawatt battery would have been utterly gigantic 3 or 4 years ago. Now it's becoming more a course of events that we see normally. The idea that this battery is 12 hours of storage that's long term. But don't be fooled by that. That doesn't mean that you hold the energy for 12 hours and if you go look at it, it's all dribbled away. It doesn't even mean that if you take energy from the battery, it'll be gone after 12 hours. It means that if you discharge the battery at its maximum rate, it will last 12 hours. But of course, the chance that you're going to discharge the battery at its maximum rate is not very high. So 12 hours of storage is a lot of storage. And a battery, this particular setup would be probably as reliable as a nuclear power plant of not a gigawatt, but smaller, maybe half a gigawatt, maybe. I'd have to study that to be certain, but it would be hundreds of megawatts anyway. And it can be, in fact, more reliable than a nuclear power plant because nuclear power plants shut down. And in fact, they're scheduled to shut down every 18 months for almost all of them in the United States. And they'll shut down for possibly a month. So we're up to Friday, May 31st. And this is an interesting article that's coming up, I think. The picture is a graph, and from ClearPower, which is the name of the people who made this product. This is a graph of solar power from a solar window. That is the dark blue from ClearPower, and the reddish color is from Kyocera. And let me read what this is. This is from Clean Technica. ClearPower solar windows could transform the building environment. Okay, ClearPower has a new type of solar window. The company says its ClearPower window not only produces power at an efficiency and power density comparable to PV modules, but it also provides solar heat gain control to reduce air conditioning and heating costs. Now, I'm going to talk about that graph a little bit. The Kyocera part of the graph, the red part, is a standard solar module out in the sun. The blue or dark blue part is from the Kyocera ClearPower window, which is mounted in a building, and also on the same day, which is why the two graphs seem to follow each other fairly closely. I want to point out that the ClearPower window, solar window, is producing more power than the Kyocera solar panels at the same time most of the day. Not all, but most of the day, the window that you could put in a building is producing more power than the panel that you'd put on the roof or, wherever out in a solar array. In the past, solar windows had been available, but they had a very low efficiency, 2% perhaps. And that's only a tenth of what you would get out of a standard solar module, perhaps. So now we're getting to a point where we can, if you have a huge building that's 100 stories tall, you've got 100 stories that you could possibly put solar panels into the windows, and that will make a difference. One thing about these solar panels is that they do have, those solar windows have tiny little panels inside them. They are double paned insulated windows, and the solar panels are between the two pieces of glass going horizontally. And they do, if you see them, they look like windows that have Venetian blinds, tiny little Venetian blinds. You can see the lines going across. This is not something that you'd put into a window that is going to be used to see a beautiful view, but this is a useful product for offices and a lot of places. Okay, our next picture is a picture of agrivoltaics. The article is from Energy Digital magazine, and the title is Behind Spain's First Agri-PV Solar Park by BayWa RE. RE is renewable energy. The first agrivoltaic solar park in Spain is ushering in a new era for sustainability. The 54 megawatt PV park by BayWa, which is not BayWa, it's BayWa, because it's German. RE integrates renewable energy, electricity production, agriculture, and biodiversity. And you can actually see this all right in front of you here. It is also a step toward Velux Group achieving its 100% renewable electricity goal. The solar panels are evident. The fact that some of them are pointing in one direction and others pointing in another, I kind of think that that's because they are tiltable, and they probably want to tilt those panels when the agricultural work is being done, so that they don't there's no danger that they would get bumped by something. The agricultural equipment that's in there looks like it's mowing straw or something like that, hay. And the area under the panels is biodiversity. They're growing flowers in there and things like that. Okay, that is, as I said, from Energy Digital magazine. So now we've got, this is a really interesting story, I thought. There we go. This is from ABC News, and this story relates to the land that you are seeing there in that picture. This is land that's a few miles from El Paso, Texas. It's a few miles from the Rio Grande River in West Texas. And the title is Texas Town Deploys Snowplows After 50-Degree Swing and 2 feet of hail. This is, I think, kind of mind-boggling. Severe weather. Temperature in the village of Marathon, Texas fell over 50 degrees, tumbled from around 105 degrees Fahrenheit to mid-50s in about 1 hour on Wednesday afternoon. This was followed by hail so deep they had to deploy snowplows to clear the streets. This was 2 feet of hail. And I'm not going to claim that this has anything to do with climate change, but it does have to do with weird weather. And I think there's a connection between a lot of weird weather and climate change. So I don't know, it might be related. One thing that I can say about weather and climate change is that you would expect that global warming would make things warmer. It does, but not everywhere all at once. And when you warm up one place, and the winds blow in different directions, and you get downdrafts and things like that, it can suddenly make something very cold someplace. So this is something to bear in mind. The fact that you have hail in the last day of May or the first day of June, and that the temperature would tumble 50 degrees from 105 to 55 does not mean that climate change is not happening. So there is that. Okay, our next picture, also a nice picture outdoors, is, I bet some people recognize this. This is Champlain Valley, and this is from NBC News. The title is, Vermont becomes first state to mandate that fossil fuel companies pay for climate damages. A new law in Vermont, the first of its kind in the United States, will require fossil fuel companies to pay for a share of the costs of climate disasters fueled by climate change. I'm sorry, weather disasters fueled by climate change. Republican Phil Scott, the Republican governor of Vermont, allowed the bill to become law without his signature. What that means is he didn't veto the bill, but he also didn't sign it. He just allowed it to become law. And what the law means is that if there's a climate disaster in Vermont, somebody can go after companies that caused the climate change. Now, I want to point out, this is, well, let me put it this way. I've seen a number of studies. I look at hundreds of articles every day. I've posted almost 60,000 links to articles online, and it takes me probably, well, every time I've counted, it's always been over 20 average per day, and it's usually been over 25. And if you think of 60,000 articles, 59,600 articles or something like that, and looking at 20 articles or 25 articles online to find each one that I use, that becomes a big number. That's over 1 million articles I've looked at over the last 12 years. And what I'm seeing is that the estimates for the number of people who die in Vermont because of air pollution is variously thought to be somewhere between 250 and 350 people per year. And I think it was an estimate from MIT that said 300 people per year. That's almost one person a day who are dying earlier than they should because of air pollution. Now that's particulate matter and things of that nature. People are dying because of climate change. And climate change is caused by human activity, I have no doubt. We could talk about how I should report that maybe, and I should say, in my opinion, having looked at a lot of stuff, that's what's happening. And I can explain it. It has some of the stuff that shows that human beings are causing the climate to change has to do with isotopes of carbon, for example. The relative amounts of carbon-13 and carbon-12, neither of which is radioactive, by the way. Plants prefer to take carbon-12 out of the atmosphere over carbon-13. And the result of that is, if you look at things that came from plants, wood, for example, over a period of time, you're going to find that over millions of years or hundreds of thousands of years or whatever, the amount of carbon-13 in the wood is going to be different depending upon how much there was in the atmosphere. So we can measure the wood and look at it and see how carbon-13 in the atmosphere has changed. But also, it means that oil and coal that were deposited underground millions and millions of years ago had higher ratio of carbon-12 to carbon-13 than we have had up to recent times. And by looking at that, we can see that there has been an increase in the amount of carbon-12 in the atmosphere in the last 100 years, which can only be explained by things being burned that have higher amounts of carbon-12 in them. And that can only happen if we're taking things out of the ground and burning them. So, as I said, scientists believe that they've got a pretty clear picture of what's going on here. Now, our next picture, this is from AZPM, and the picture shows Saguaro cactus. I believe those are Saguaro cactus. They sure look like it. And that is in an Arizona desert. The title of the article is Arizona is Advancing in Renewable Energy with Federal Investments. Now, I should be clear here. These federal investments in the last week have gone to almost every state. 60 different areas, in some states more than one per state. Almost every state, a few states were not included. Indian tribes, territories, Puerto Rico, and islands in the Pacific. Okay, that's the title. And let me read the synopsis. Arizona is on the front line for up-and-coming solutions for climate change thanks to federal investments for our renewable energy, our being Arizona's. Since 2021, Arizona has received $10.5 billion for clean energy through the bipartisan infrastructure law and the Inflation Reduction Act. Now, of course, there are people in Arizona who are rather conservative, and they don't like this. They don't like the Inflation Reduction Act particularly. But, they can argue out there with people who would lose their jobs if they didn't have this money. This has happened in Vermont, New Hampshire, New York, Maine. I don't know, maybe Massachusetts, Connecticut, or Rhode Island. I would think so. But almost every state. And I haven't looked at the numbers for Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Rhode Island. Okay. Our next picture is a picture of solar power, and this article is from Power Technology. The title is Avada Energy wins 1.05 gigawatt solar project in India from NTPC. Now, I want to tell you, 1.505 gigawatts is huge, but we're going to be talking about things that are bigger. Indian renewable energy company Avada Energy has awarded a 1.05 gigawatt solar project in an auction by the National Thermal Power Corporation's Renewable Energy Implementation Agency. The project, won at competitive tariff of 3.2 cents per kilowatt hour, is set for completion by 2026. Now, 3.2 cents per kilowatt hour is not a lot of money, especially when we are paying, I'm going to guess, 20 cents per kilowatt hour in Vermont. But 3.2 cents is not the retail, it's the wholesale figure. It's the figure that the solar project gets as it puts this energy on the grid. And of course, across the world, 3.2 cents is not particularly low. It's just very low for electricity that we would see in Vermont or much of the United States. The actual figures are, that's probably sort of normal. NextEra Energy has been expecting the overall cost of solar power or wind power backed up by batteries, so it's approximately as reliable as nuclear energy for dispatchable electricity at peak demand rates. They're expecting those prices to be below 4 cents per kilowatt hour with the battery backup by 2030, which is why NextEra, which is by some metrics, the largest utility in the United States, owns seven nuclear reactors, including Seabrook. It's why they are not spending money on nuclear, coal, gas, or oil. The only money they're spending for the next 10 years, according to I should say 8 now because it's been 2 years since the 10-year forecast. They put out a thing in 2022 saying that's what they were going to do. Okay, I'm falling behind here, so I'm going to have to catch up. Our next item, here is a picture of, you can see somebody surfing in the middle of the screen. This is from ABC News. Paris aims for most sustainable Olympics yet. Organizers say plan isn't perfect. Of all the decisions that the Paris Olympics organizers made about where to hold each sport, sending surfing competitions to the other side of the world in the Pacific waters of Tahiti, by the way, is part of France, provoked the strongest reactions, but the decision is based on climate goals. The Olympic Committee actually looked at the alternatives, and they decided that the climate goals that they wanted, which was low emissions, would be met better if they just sent all of these people to Tahiti. So that's what they did. Okay, the next picture that we've got is a picture of a car burning. And this article is from Clean Technica. The burning car, I've seen this on multiple occasions, and it's pretty impressive when a car burns. The title of the article is EVs Don't Catch on Fire as Frequently as Gasoline-Powered Cars Do. The media is full of stories about EVs that catch on fire, but research doesn't support the claim that there's many of them. In fact, data shows that EVs are much less likely to burst into flames than vehicles that are powered by internal combustion. The IIHS says it never had an EV. The IIHS is an organization that tests cars by crashing them into things. It says that it never had an electric vehicle catch fire in crash testing. And I want to tell you, as I said, I have seen I've seen EVs. I've never seen an EV catch fire. I haven't seen many EVs compared to gasoline cars, but gasoline cars do catch fire. And as I looked into this particular article, I looked for a figure which is the conversion between gasoline vapor mixed with the air and dynamite. What is the relationship? And it turns out that 1 gallon, and it's hard to get an exact figure here. The figures vary widely. The number of sticks of dynamite that are the equivalent of 1 gallon of gasoline evaporated into the air ranges, depending upon where the data is coming from 20 sticks of dynamite being 1 gallon to 80 sticks of dynamite being 1 gallon. Now, that is the reason why I would not park a car in a garage, at least not if it's powered by gasoline. I consider gasoline dangerous stuff. And I have seen multiple times when cars had gas tanks that had pinholes in them and they leaked. And in one occasion, a car over the course of a few hours leaked out everything that was in its gas tank. So, you know, I don't like gasoline in cars. I don't like having gasoline in houses, which is where garages normally are. Okay, the next picture here is a picture of a place called Gardi Sugdub. And believe it or not, this is from ABC News. The title is Panama Prepares to Evacuate First Island in Face of Rising Sea Levels. On a tiny island off Panama's Caribbean coast, and by the way, that picture is actually a picture of the island, the places on the island where people live. About 300 families are packing their belongings. The Gunas of Gardi Sugdub are the first of 63 communities along Panama's coasts that officials and scientists expect to be forced to relocate by rising sea levels in the coming decades. Is that going to have any effect on the United States? Well, according to stories that I've seen, there are already communities that are being evacuated in the United States, and the people are being told that they have to move. And there are, you know, the Republican government of Louisiana has basically told everybody who lives near the coast, and in the area of New Orleans, anybody who is outside the levee system, they're going to have to move. Cameron Parish, which is the size of Bennington County and Windsor County put together, parish is the equivalent of a county. Almost everybody in Cameron Parish has been told that they're going to have to move within a few decades. And the town of Cameron, the village of Cameron, the area of Cameron, basically the population is 3/4 or more gone already. They're moving out because of damage that is being done altogether too often by hurricanes and sea level rise. And the water level in the Gulf of Mexico has gone up 6 inches in the last 10 years. And 10 years ago, they had predicted that it would be 6 inches during the course of this century. So they're way off. Things are developing far worse than anybody planned, or expected, I should say. Nobody planned it. We are up to Monday, June 3rd, and we have a picture of a young woman. Well, she's young compared to me. This is Claudia Sheinbaum. You remember Claudia Sheinbaum? You don't know Claudia Sheinbaum? She's the president-elect of Mexico. This is from CNBC. The title is, Mexico elects Claudia Sheinbaum as the country's first ever female president. I think it's possible that she's also the first ever Jewish president of Mexico. And She also is, I'm quite sure, the first president of Mexico who ever was an author, contributing author of a report for the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC. Anyway, this is a woman who is really interesting, and she is quite knowledgeable about the climate, and I think realistic about politics, which is one of the reasons why she got elected. Interesting to know that that's happened. Okay, our next item is from Renews, and oh, I've already put it up. The picture there is just wind turbines. The title is EU Wind Solar Grow 65% in 4 years. Okay, in the European Union, wind power and solar power have grown 65% in the last 4 years. I'm deciphering the title. Since the current European Commission took office in 2019, the European Union wind and solar capacity has grown by 65%, adding 188 gigawatts, displacing fossil fuel generation and driving down emissions, according to an analysis from Ember. Solar capacity has grown faster, up 113%. So solar capacity is 213% of what it was 5 years ago. It has grown to 257 gigawatts, according to Ember. So this is good news in a way. I think one thing that's kind of sad about it is that a lot of this happened because Russia invaded Ukraine and people were dying. I wish we would do things for better reasons than that. Or to put it another way, I wish we would do that without having a war going on. But, you know, wars happen and we have to deal with them. Okay, our next item is from ABC News. And what we have here is a picture of burned land. The title of the article is California wildfires altering ecosystems, disrupting wildlife habitats. U.S. forest fires are becoming more intense, more frequent, and more widespread, according to climate scientists and wildfire experts, writing for a study in the Proceedings of Natural Academy of Sciences. I shouldn't say writing, they might have been quoted. The stories that burned large swaths of land in California are reshaping wildlife ecosystems. Wildlife ecosystems are very often rather fragile, and a fire that burns a forest might kill everything in the ground for a couple of feet down. I'm reminded of a story written by somebody who was in the Chicago fire in the, what was it, late 1870s, 1880s? I forget the date. And he said that when they knew that the fire was coming, they dug a huge hole in the backyard, deep hole, I should say, in the backyard. And they took certain valuables, including all the silverware, put it down into the hole, and then put dirt on it. When they got back, the house was gone. Everything in it was gone except for things that were ceramic, like the chimney made of brick. But when they dug down into that hole, which was several feet deep, they found that the fire on the surface was hot enough that all of the silverware melted. That is not good. Animals, mice, insects that live underground are shielded if the wildfire goes by fast enough. But in a forest fire or in just intense wildfire, they die. And, you know, not much you can say about that. Here's a nice picture. Tuesday, June 4th, we're up to that date. This is a picture of a palm oil plantation. I think that's really beautiful. This is from a publication called The Edge, Malaysia. The title is Solar Power Could Generate 54 Times More Profits Than Palm Oil, according to Maybank. Large-scale solar ventures will allow palm oil producers to generate up to 54 times more operating profits per hectare compared to palm oil, Maybank Investment Bank said. One plantation has already made its renewable energy ambition public with a 1 gigawatt capacity target. So this one plantation, which looked a little bit, I would say, like what you're seeing on the screen, announced that it's going to take out its palm oil and put in solar. Now, if they put that in with biodiversity and agrivoltaic, they're going to have something that looks nothing like this, but it might actually be much more beneficial from the point of view of bringing down carbon emissions, because the palm oil that they're making, a lot of that is used in ways, produced in ways and used in ways that really are not beneficial to the environment. So I'm going to go on. We have an article next from Clean Technica. And let me put this up. What you're seeing there is wind turbines. Those white things are wind turbines. And each of those pedestals has got a complete set of wind turbines on top of it. These rotate around an axis that is vertical rather than the ones that we're accustomed to that are horizontal. The title of this is Flower Turbines and the Potential of Small-Scale Wind. One major difference between the large wind turbines and those that could be used in a city is the type of turbine. The small vertical axis wind turbines, such as those Flower Turbines makes, can produce energy efficiently and can be used on city buildings as well as on residences. Now, this is something, this idea of the vertical wind turbine of this basic type is something that we've been aware of for years. And first of all, they're entirely different. They don't make noise. They don't kill birds. I don't know how their efficiency compares with the big wind turbines. The big wind turbines that we see with the horizontal axis and the blades go around, those are for the most part put up so high that birds fly around under them. But not very few birds are killed by them compared to other places. I should tell you about I wanted to find out how many birds were killed by generating plants. So I did a search for peer-reviewed studies that talked about how they got inventories of dead birds. And it took me a long time to find them, but I finally came across one. This particular paper, peer-reviewed paper, said that they had found, they did an inventory over an inventory period, and there were a bunch of problems that were expressed. For example, you come across a pile of feathers where some animal has eaten a bird. Do you count that as a kill because it collided with your generating equipment, or is it a kill because it was just grabbed by some fox or something like that? If you see a fox running with a duck in its mouth, or a seagull flying off with a much smaller bird that is dead, how did those birds die? So they had to estimate. They counted the birds. They could tell how the bird died, and they estimated the rest. And it turned out they counted something like 1,700 birds, and they estimated that double that number had been killed by by generating equipment. And that doesn't sound good, and that's 5,100 birds. The inventory was done during migration season, and it was done over a period of 48 hours. So 5,100 birds had died over a 48-hour period, which sounds horrible, and it is. The thing is, that doesn't tell you anything about wind turbines, because this particular plant didn't have any wind turbines. It had a nuclear reactor and 6 coal-burning stations, and that was it. These birds were killed because they were running into cooling towers. And the likelihood of birds being killed by wind turbines is actually, we don't know. But we know that many birds are killed without, in other ways. The number one killer of birds is cats. The number 2 is cats. And I forget which is which, but one of them is feral cats and the other is domestic cats that are allowed outdoors. These are the real killers. And far worse than wind turbines are buildings that have big windows. I used to live in a house that had 2 picture windows in the living room that faced west and 3 picture windows in the living room that faced south. And from a bird's point of view, that was a clear way to fly right through that room, and the cat would go out, and he wouldn't even actively hunt birds. He would go out and sit under the picture windows, and when a bird fell dead, he would eat it. You know, this is how human beings are. We have lots of ways. Cars kill a lot of birds, and car fumes kill a lot of birds, and truck fumes. Okay, the next picture is Fatih Birol, and this is from Renews. Renewable plans must match the COP28 goal. And an International Energy Agency report, COP28, tripling renewable capacity pledge, tracking countries' ambitions and identifying policies to bridge the gap, that's all part of the title, found very few countries have 2030 targets for installed capacity in the nationally determined contributions under the Paris Agreement. And Fatih Birol has been very interested in doing something about climate change for a long time, and he really kind of laid into countries and said, we've got to triple the amount of renewable energy we have by 2030. We don't have a lot of time to do this. And he was very insistent on that. Okay. We are out. I should put him up so that people can actually see him. Sorry, I didn't do that earlier. Okay, we are up to Wednesday, June 5th, and that is today. I'm sorry, yesterday, as I am doing this. Our first item on the agenda for Wednesday is from the Sierra Club, and it has a picture of the Block Island Wind Farm during a period of waviness, stormy water, waves. The title is Offshore Wind to Save New England Families $630 million on electricity annually. Offshore wind is critical to achieve New England's climate goals, reduce energy costs locally, and protect New Englanders from volatile gas prices. A report authored by Synapse Energy Economics Incorporated says it examined developing 9 gigawatts of offshore wind power by 2030. Well, we could, in fact, develop 9 gigawatts of offshore wind power by 2030. I think that's a realistic figure if something doesn't get in the way. The problem that we've got is that there are people out there who would prefer to have things stuck the way they have been. And I feel quite certain that a lot of those people are engaged in trying to maintain fossil fuels as they have been. I think that for the future, it's very important that we start really taking responsibility for keeping the environment clean, and that means reducing carbon emissions and other greenhouse gas emissions. This is a serious problem that we've got to face. Okay, now I talked about a few minutes ago. I talked about the fact that 1.2 gigawatts or 1.5 gigawatts, I forget the number, was a lot. And this picture is a picture of a solar array in western China. It is not the solar array I'm going to be talking about, but it just, these areas, like saying western China is kind of like saying the United States west of the Mississippi River or something like that. We're talking about mountains, we're talking about prairies, we're talking about all kinds of different geological features. And in this, we're talking about China. And this is from PV Tech. The title for this project is China Commissions 5 Gigawatt Solar Project, the world's largest. Now, I was saying that 1.2 or 1.5, whatever it was, gigawatts was big earlier in this program, and we were going to be talking about bigger. This is bigger. 5 gigawatt solar project is huge. China commissioned the world's largest solar project, a massive 5 gigawatt facility on the northwest of Xinjiang region. China now holds the world's 3 largest solar projects by capacity. And it names, I'm not going to try to pronounce Chinese because I know I get it wrong. I don't know about the tonalities. But the other 2 projects, the second and third, they're tied for second because they're the same size. Both of them have capacities of 3 gigawatts. So they have 3 solar projects with a total capacity of 11 gigawatts. And these things are just absolutely gigantic. I don't know. China is so far ahead of the United States in a number of respects. It is just astonishing to me. But this is one of them. The Chinese make their own solar panels. The United States had 650 electric buses in it at a time when Bogota, Colombia, ordered 702. And why would Bogota consider that a safe order to place? Because they already had 700. There were 700 electric buses in one Latin American city when there were only 650 in the entire United States. We have been held back, and we are paying for it. I remember visiting a friend of mine, I'm going to say 20 years ago. No, less than that, 10 years ago. I visited a friend. It happened that he was having a bunch of guys over to play poker on a Friday night, and I happened to be there. And they asked me what I did, and I told them, and I mentioned the term carbon footprint, and one of them said, "You believe in climate change?" Like I had to be absolutely stupid to believe in climate change. And the response that I had for that, and I didn't say it, but I should have, is if we don't act on this, aside from the damage that climate change is going to do, we are locking ourselves out of the biggest business opportunity. Business opportunity was something these guys understood. We are locking ourselves out of the biggest business opportunity in the history of man. And, there it is. The Chinese make the majority of all buses worldwide because the majority of buses sold worldwide are electric, and the Chinese have been making, up until the last year or so, almost all of the electric buses. So they really almost had the bus market World bus market cornered. How many billions of dollars is that? I don't know.